All right, everyone. How is everyone doing? You guys good? Great. Welcome to another live Q&A with Friedman van Eisen. That's me. Here we go. All right, everyone. How's it going? I know this is kind of spontaneous. Usually, I would do these live podcasts, the live Q&As, on a Monday, but tomorrow I can't do it. Can't make that because I'm in the studio, so I won't be able to make that, unfortunately. So I'm taking off 20 minutes of my day today to bring you guys some answers to your questions, and I'm already seeing the live chat fill up, so that's good. Everyone's already kind of here. Let's look at that live chat and see what's going on. First of all, I've implemented this thing called Super Chat, which I think means you can donate money to sponsor me and ask a question that's like getting highlighted. And the way I want to do that is, if you're submitting a question through the Super Chat, first of all, I will definitely answer your question. And secondly, that money will go into a fund. And from that fund, at Christmas time, I will give away free courses of the Holistic Songwriting library of courses, if that makes any sense. So basically, if you're asking a question using the Super Chat, all that money that's being collected there is going to be used to fund starter songwriters who otherwise couldn't afford to buy those courses. All right. So let's see what's going on here in the chat. I was just watching your Q&As. Thanks for the inspiration. Well, that's good, Marco. You have yet to listen to the audiobook, but purchased it on release day. The intro sounded good. All right, that's great. I'll forward that compliment to Linnea, who was the audio producer for that audiobook, and she did a fantastic job. It was so much fun working with her. Actually, so much fun that when it was done, I wrote her an email saying, I feel like writing another book so we could do this again. It really was a great time, and you should definitely check her out on linneamusic.com, and that's LINNEAH, linneamusic.com. No dashes or anything. So, cool. I look like Javier Pinola, apparently. So, says Gabriel Siguillo. And you have to do the motion, otherwise it doesn't sound remotely Spanish, does it? Or Italian? I don't know. I know that Fuma on the t-shirt means smoke. That's the whole joke, because he's smoking a blunt. So, that's the joke. Cool. I'm glad the Drake breakdown went down well. Yeah, apparently, like, a lot of you really like that Drake video that I did. I'm so happy that that's over with, to be honest, because that was a long episode in the works. It took me over 2 months to get that whole thing rolled out. It took me over a week in research, which is more than usual. Usually I'll take 2 or 3 days, like entire days. This time, since I'm German, and in Germany we don't really listen to that much American hip-hop, I love Drake, and I've been listening to him for a while, but I never really, listened, never really analyzed what he was doing. So listening to Drake full on was quite a challenge for over a week. And it's a whole subculture, a whole culture that I really had to kind of get into first, so that took me a little bit longer than usual. And then post-production was a nightmare this time. I mean, starting with the fact that there's so many little tidbits in that episode, like the piece that I sang personally, then there's a lot of notation, then there's the lyrics that have to move up at the right point in time, and then the dots that appear, all of that just takes me, it's just every one of those little things just takes me another hour of time, so that took a really long time. Then I had problems exporting the whole thing. For some reason, it wouldn't export one tiny portion of the whole thing, but I didn't know where that portion was, so I had to export several parts of it to figure out where that was. It was a friggin' nightmare, which is why it took over 2 months for that whole thing to come to fruition. But I think it turned out nice, and so far feedback has been very, very good. 26,000 views, I think, in the first 4 days is pretty amazing. I'm really happy with that. And yeah, also it's going really well with the Addiction Formula. I've heard the Addiction Formula, the audiobook version of it, which just released with that Drake video together, is now a bestseller on Amazon. It's the hottest new release in songwriting. It's on the #1 spot in songwriting and on lyrics. So I don't know what to say, guys. It's pretty fantastic, and thank you so much. And it sends a clear message, and that message is that I should be doing more of that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm trying to listen with everything that you guys are telling me. I try to listen and try to put up more stuff like that, so you guys get the most out of this whole thing. So anyways, let's move over to the chat and see if we have some questions here that I could answer for you guys today. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit and see what's going on. All right, Let Low says, question, I find it really hard to find the style that I want to write in. I'm in so many different genres that I can't really decide on which one to write in. Any suggestions? Yeah, think about what you want to do. It's really that simple, but for a lot of people, that's really difficult to do. But actually sit down with a piece of paper, write down everything that you're doing right now, everything that you want to do, and then slowly try to figure out, like, okay, so what can I live without? Or what do I want to focus on, right? Like, if you can have all these different influences, but for example, focus on, okay, so my main thing is going to be, it's going to be a pop project, right? So it's got to be pop. And there can be some folk influences and some electronic influences, but my main thing is going to be pop. Instead of saying it's going to be pop, it's a pop, electronic, rock, whatever, Spanish folklore, metal crossover thing, just figure out the one thing that it's supposed to be. And then whatever, everything else just kind of like inspires it, but it's not really the thing that you're doing. You know what I mean? So just kind of sit down, and kind of like a mind map, I guess, like have like the big word in the middle, like I want to do alternative music, or I want to do, maybe alternative is a little bit too broad, but like figure out one word that fits what you want to do, write that in the middle, and then everything else just kind of feeds into that. So that's what I would do if I were you. And I was in that situation, so that's what I actually did. So, do you prefer to write books about music or music itself, says Paige Rebel. I like both, really. I mean, writing a book, there's so much more to writing a book than just the actual writing. The actual writing is probably my favorite part. And then the releasing, that's fun. And that stuff is obviously fun. But, you know, I did all the layout myself. I did all the graphics myself. I did all the QCing myself, the quality check. I did all of that. And that takes a shitload of time. So that part I wasn't really so fond of. And so, but you know, it's creative. It's being creative. And that's what I like about it. As anytime I can just sit down with a blank piece of paper and just start to make that piece of paper something that expresses me somehow, you know, that where someone looks at that piece of paper and says like, oh yeah, that's Friedemann Findeisen. You know, if whenever something like that happens, whether that's with music or writing a book or writing a blog post for holistic songwriting or making a video like these, if I can change, like, you know, the pixels on a screen so it's expresses me somehow as an artistic image, I'm happy with that. And that's what I feel this is as well. You know, holistic songwriting, I see it very much as an artistic project as well, because I have a vision with this. I have some artistic guidelines that I'm following. And, you know, there's all these rules that I set myself for this project. I approach it very much like this was, you know, a music career. So I like both of them. I must say, though, that with music, I get that zoned out feeling a lot more, that I just like, I'm completely in the music and forget everything around me. I have that with songwriting, with book writing too, but still. Oh, wow, HK just known it. It's $10. That's super nice. And he says, well done and thanks. Your books are truly inspiring, and I'm in an inimitable style. That's super nice. And if you have a question, HK, feel free to ask it. I will definitely answer it. Cool. How to create a good writing routine and stick with it, says T. Jill, I guess. This is probably the most difficult, the biggest problem that any songwriter has to face is, especially in the beginning when you don't have that success yet and people that are waiting for you, when you don't have those external deadlines. That's probably the hardest thing, the hardest phase to get through as a beginning songwriter, is to like figure out a routine, just figure out a way to constantly produce stuff and not being bogged down or distracted by these external factors. And that includes anything from, your girlfriend to grocery shopping to, I don't know, going to some wedding or something like that, right? We're just being distracted by everything. There's so much to this. And I really had to figure this out on my own. And I'm still figuring it out, to be honest. But some things that have helped me is always get up at the same time, and go to sleep at roughly the same time. Well, like when you get tired is usually a good time to go to sleep. That means that you're not tired the entire day. And then what works for me is I don't look at my emails before noon or so. And until then, I just work. Like that's the first thing. I get upstairs into my studio right here, and I'll just start working on whatever it is. But I just need to get out some work, right? Otherwise, I'll feel shitty the rest of the day. And then, like then I have lunch and stuff like that. And then usually like between 1 and 3 p.m., I'm not in a good workspace. Like it doesn't really work for me that well. And I get tired and distracted really easily. So usually in that time, I just do something else. And sometimes that's stuff like editing, so mindless stuff that I can just do whenever. And then after that, I'll get back into real work. The work that requires brain power and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of details that kind of make this work, I think. And it's things like I love taking cold showers, and that's something that really wakes me up in the morning and keeps me fresh. And the way that works is, and you basically just start taking normal showers, and at the end of your shower, you add on a minute of an extremely cold shower, like the coldest your shower can go. And you just, like in the beginning, you just start with your legs and just slowly go up the body, and don't do the head at first. By now, I can just like turn on the cold water and go for 2 minutes, just cold shower everywhere, straight away. But in the beginning, just start slow and just start with your legs. And that's already quite a challenge. And the most important thing is to keep breathing. And that whole thing, like taking cold showers, just kind of puts you in a place where you're more of a fighter. It wakes you up, first of all, but secondly, it puts you in that fighter, in that warrior kind of mood where you're like, I resisted this in the morning, so I'm ready for anything today, So that's one of the things I swear by personally, and I know a lot of people who love taking cold showers at the end of their regular showers. So it's things like that. And set yourself deadlines clearly. And there's tons of stuff that I could talk about, but that's, I think, good enough of an answer for now because there's a lot of other people who want their questions answered too. So I'm just going to keep going. Oh, all right. So there's apparently a joke about Quien Fuma and El Puma. So that's funny. So I didn't know I was diving into an entire subculture with this t-shirt. I just thought it was funny because he was smoking a blunt. So anyways. All right. Hi, what are your tips to promote original music? How do I know if I'm being spammy or annoying while promoting? Where's the limit? Thanks. Well, I think what you should really think about is having certain circles of posting frequency. If I haven't said I like your stuff, I shouldn't be getting that many messages from you. If I've said I really like your stuff, I should be getting more emails from you. And if I've said, oh, I like your stuff so much that I bought something of yours, like a piece of merchandise or a CD or a song on iTunes, then I should be getting the most emails, right? That's just what makes sense to me. If I love your stuff, then it just makes sense that I should be getting more emails from you. Then I'm interested in what you have to say. So I have these different circles of, let's call it spamming frequency for the lack of a better term. If you are not a fan on Facebook, the only way you will hear about me is if you go looking for me on YouTube or on Facebook, and also by clicking on my ads, because sometimes I run ads on Facebook. If you are a fan on Facebook, that means you are interested. If you like the page, that already shows that you have some interest in what I do. So that's when I start. That's when I regularly start posting stuff, and I try to keep it relevant to everyone, or just make it something fun that everyone just likes reading. So I don't just post for the sake of posting. I always try to make it funny or interesting or something. Try to keep it light and enjoyable, and always try to post some content as well, like regularly. If it's just, oh, look what I ate today, like 7 days a week, no one's going to follow me anymore, because like they're here to learn about songwriting, in your case, to listen to your music, to find out more about you as an artist, and not just what you ate, but they want to know what's going on in your brains, and what kind of music you write, and how you come up with writing your own music, and where the inspiration comes from, and what the life of a songwriter looks like. So that's the second kind of circle. And then the third circle is when you're in my email list. That means that you have a lot of input into this. Like, you like my stuff so much that you actually gave me your email address, and said like, yes, I want to receive these messages from you. And at that point, I'm sending you definitely a lot more emails, and you might get an email every 2 or 3 days. And if you don't like that stuff, you can always unsubscribe, obviously, from my newsletters. But it's at this point that I'm giving you my very best stuff. Like, if I'm sending you something every 3 days, I want to make sure that it's just really, really good stuff. And I understand that for an artist, that's a big challenge. But you have to think about that, right? Think about these different circles, and that's going to influence how much stuff you're going to post. So think about these different circles of fans. Like, there's not just one type of fan. There's some people who are just like mildly interested, who might have seen your video, maybe liked it. Then there's those that liked it and subscribed to you. And then there's those that really like put a step forward and say like, yes, I love your stuff and I want to hear all about you. Cool. Do you plan to do more analysis on branding like the Adele video? It was amazing, says Indy the Kid. Well, thank you very much, first of all. Yeah, I will. There's... with every video, I try to put in some marketing for several reasons. First of all, I think it's super interesting. I think it's important for musicians to realize that marketing is not this foot in the door, ice cold, money-making thing, but it can actually be very artistic and creative and beautiful. So I want to slowly bring songwriters closer to that realization that marketing is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means connecting a question with an answer, or connecting a want of a listener with something really cool that they might actually like. It's really helping people to understand what you do. That's how I see marketing. So yeah, definitely that's going to happen some more in the future. I think I'm probably going to combine it a little bit more with the music. That Adele video wasn't particularly successful, and I think the reason for that is because my viewers are predominantly songwriters / producers. And so I think it should be mostly music, about the music, and then have those as sort of add-ons. And that's kind of what I did with the Drake episode, which I think struck a pretty good balance between those two things. We got another donation from Superran13 of £10. I don't know why this is in pounds, but thank you very much. How would you recommend finding and making contact with people in the music industry, both producers and artists? I've heard this is a selling point of university, but is it necessary to go? That's a really big discussion, whether university is necessary or useful. I think, look, I loved my time at conservatory. I really, really loved it. I had a blast. I met a lot of really cool, creative people. For me, it was the best time of my life. Seriously, I love going to the conservatory. The first one I didn't love that much. The second one, Artes, Enschede, the Netherlands, absolutely. I loved it. I loved every single second of it. Is it really necessary to go? I think still that most of my songwriting comes from the time before I went there. But okay, so your question is about meeting and keeping contact with people. So I'm going to try to keep it about that. I definitely met a lot of people through university, through conservatory, and also a lot of industry professionals. So that definitely opened up a lot of opportunities for me, and it definitely did help me get in touch with with the next level up, I would say. It didn't get me in touch with like the big guys, but the big guys usually don't really go to conservatories because they're just busy working. And I've met a couple of those big people now through Holistic Songwriting, by the way, in case you're wondering. And they're just too busy. They don't even think about going to conservatory. So you can expect to get some contacts out of it if you're good. Obviously, that's granted, because you might have like someone come in, do like a masterclass for 50 or 100 people. The bigger he is, the more people he's going to talk to. And then you got to be that one dude in 100 who really stands out and really does something spectacular to get that person's attention. And but at least you're one of 100 and not one of 10,000s who send him emails every single day, right? Because that's a big difference. So I guess it is easier to get in touch with bigger people if your conservatory, or the one that you're thinking about going to at the moment, is does stuff in that vein, gets guest speakers to do master classes. And my first one didn't really, like, it wasn't really like those impressive industry professionals. The second one definitely did, and we got in touch with a couple of interesting people. But to answer your first question, how would you recommend finding and making contact with people in the music industry? There's a really good book called Never Eat Alone, which I definitely suggest you read. And I've done a lot of the techniques in this book, one of which I'm going to tell you about in a second. And it has actually worked, and I've got in contact with quite some higher ups in the industry. And my favorite tip from that book, that's seriously my favorite tip, is if you want to contact someone and you know that person's name and you know exactly who you want to contact, go on their Facebook page, and usually you'll see like you have common friends with that person. And I did that and saw like, oh, I have 2 common friends with that person. So I wrote both of them. And I did the same on LinkedIn, by the way. So I didn't just do it on Facebook. You could also do it on Twitter or whatever. I don't know if they have like common friends on Twitter, but the point is you find common friends with that person. And I wrote both of them and I said, hey, I want to get in contact with blank. Do you know that person, or are you just friends just for the fuck of it? If you know that person, would it be possible? Could you could you get the 2 of us in actual contact? The first one wrote back like, oh no, I like her stuff, so that's why I liked her. But the second one says like, yeah, actually, I was his violinist, or her violinist in this case, on stage. So I have worked with her previously. And of course, we are not great friends, but I could definitely forward you the message because I have her email address. Should I do that? I said, yes, of course. And we got in contact and we actually started working on a project together. How cool is that? That actually worked. So, and that has worked a couple of times. So that's probably my favorite thing, to get in touch with people I don't know yet. And it obviously helps if you have a great portfolio. I sent her like right in my very first email. It was a very short message because I know these people don't have a lot of time on their hand. And the very first thing that I said was like, here's my show reel. Check it out. If you don't like it, you don't have to read any further. And she liked it. And so we got in touch. So that's how I would recommend finding and making contact with people in the music industry. And again, buy that book. I think it's a really fantastic read. Again, that book is called Never Eat Alone. All right, let's go back. I think it jumped a little bit, but let's see what you guys are asking. I'm fasting, says David Levo. I've heard that that's really good. Unfortunately, I'm just a fatty, and I don't like fasting. But I should try it sometime. I hear from a lot of people that fasting is really good for discipline. I shall try that, actually, until next week, probably. I'll try. Oh, it's probably going to be really difficult because I'm not in town, but I should definitely try that. Okay. All right. Sicarius Bladeheart says, have you ever written an R&B song? If so, what are some important things you need in R&B songwriting? I think currently, if you're writing R&B, like the first thing that comes to mind is just the sounds, right? The 808, 707, a 606 probably, maybe a 303. To me is like the most important ones. And then having like Nexus or some synthesizer that has those sounds, I think is like the first thing that I go to, because I think those sounds are so inspiring. When I hear them, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what this has to sound like now, you know? And whether you keep them for the original or final production is up to you. I sometimes switch them out because I don't want to sound like every other artist out there. So I sometimes switch out those sounds that I started writing with. But I find sounds extremely inspiring when it comes to R&B and pop music. So yeah, that's what I would probably look into, is 808s especially, and something like Nexus or Sylenth or what's that one? It's something with an A. Man, I use it every day. What's it called? I feel like it's not Abstract, but something like that. Oh, whatever. It's also another one of those German products. It's a really good synth. I'm sure someone will come up with it. And I'll tell you guys in just a second. All right, I struggle with writing vocal harmonies, says Chuckleg. I hear that a lot of popular music uses a third or sixth interval over the melody, but what if neither of those notes are in the chord beneath the melody? In that case, you usually just look at the chord and see what chord note is closest to your melody, right? So if you're singing a sixth or like a six above, or what you might call a 13 if you're a jazzer, and like over, say, like a tonic chord, right? Maybe you have like a minor chord and you're singing a six above that. Then the next note, like below that, would be the fifth, and the note above that would be the one, or I don't know, major seven or whatever it might be, or minor seven if you're in minor. So you just kind of look at the surrounding notes in the chord, and that probably becomes your next note in the harmony. Or if that's too close, because that will be a major second interval, which doesn't sound that great for harmony, so that's not a note I would probably use. So I'd probably go down a fourth from that sixth to get to the third, or even root note of the chord. Yeah, so that's kind of how it works. Like, sometimes I do something where I sing like completely different chords over chords. So maybe I have like a tonic sound, but I'll sing, I don't know, something freaky over it if I want to sound really jazzy, but I don't think that's probably what you're asking for. So I'm not going to go into that all too deeply. Usually I just try to stick with the chord notes for the backing vocals. Okay. Franzi Music says, hey, I am a musician as well, wondering what's more important than writing a song, when writing a song, the lyrics or the melody? I think the melody. And Max Martin would agree with me. Oh, this is an interesting one. David Munoz says, what do you think of basing your band's image on the artistic vision in an impersonal way versus presenting yourself as a group of people and making the audience familiar with the members? So if I'm understanding this correctly, the question is, should we market ourselves as one band where everyone is just kind of, pulling the same rope? Or do we market ourselves as 5 individuals who each have their own personality? Kind of like, the Backstreet Boys or whatever. I think both are possible. And I'm looking at the Backstreet Boys, which I know you guys are not the Backstreet Boys, clearly. But you look at both of those cases. We have bands that represent one image together, like the Deftones or the Red Hot Chili Peppers, where I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers is actually a really good example because, for example, Flea or Flea, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I think it's Flea, is like this really characteristic person. Like everyone knows Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, right? So in the case of the RHCP, all of the band together form a cohesive unit, but still everyone has their own individual personality. And I think that's kind of the sweet spot. But I think it's always important that everyone together also has an image that they represent for the outside. And that's also been the same for the Backstreet Boys or trying to think of other examples here, but Fifth Harmony and all of these bands or supergroups or whatever. It's always been about the music first and about representing something for the outside world first, before going into the personality of every single one. And I think that's how you should handle it as well, personally. Because if it feels like everyone's kind of tugging the whole thing into a different direction, everyone's just kind of fighting against each other within the band, that's not a good thing. And you should also have like a sort of like equality in the band, that everyone gets roughly the same amount of press time, unless there's like one artist and a band based around him. That's a different thing. Like, with, I don't know, Adele or something like that, where you have one big artist in the middle and everyone else is just kind of being hired and is seen as Adele plus band. That's a different thing. But usually if you're a band together, try to keep everything kind of equal in terms of exposition to the public, if you know what I mean. And try to have like one vision shared between all of you and make sure that people understand that vision. And that's a lot harder to do if everyone has their own thing going on. All right. I think I don't have that much time left, unfortunately, but I'm trying to answer as many questions as I can before in 10 minutes now. Okay. All right. All right. Marco says my band is planning to release three EPs. Two are upbeat, and the third is quite somber and dark. We are upbeat. We are wary this might scare our audience. Would you release the latter between the two happy ones, or give them the approachable music first and finish the trilogy with the dark EP? Oof, that's a difficult one. Um, Something you might consider is just like when you release your EP. You know, if you release it in the fall or winter, then it might be a good time to release that darker EP. You know, and then when it's summer again, you release your happier, lighter stuff. Just make it dependent on that. It's like something that's I know is being done a lot in the industry, and I mean I notice it on Facebook, on YouTube as well. You know, like when fall comes around and the skies are getting grayer, people comment meaner things. Like that's how I notice it personally. Is I'm getting a lot of nice comments. There's always some bad ones, but in the fall time, those bad comments like are pretty overwhelming. So people are in a bad mood naturally during that time. So I think it's a good idea to release something darker then, because then you're just sort of like vibing with them a lot more. Is that a word, vibing? All right, Sargam Sundrani says, while writing a song, I'm always doubtful about the melody having been written by someone else already. So how do I make sure that the melody is perfectly my own, or should I? Um, I've said this before, but when I have something that I'm thinking like, oh, this seems awfully familiar. Did I write this myself? I'll send it off to a couple of other people and ask them like, have you heard this before? Is this really mine or whatever? And I'll send it to people that listen to the same genre as my song was written in. And I've had it like two or three times where people wrote back and said like, "Oh yeah, this kind of sounds like this," and then I listened to that and was like, "Oh no, it sounds nothing like it." And I figured out that it was actually my own. Like if you have something like that, if you're like the best songs that I've ever written were songs like that, where I thought like, "Oh, this has got to be something already," and then I sent it off to people. Everyone said like, "Nope, never heard it. Must be your own," and it was just really a really catchy tune. So yeah, but that's kind of how I do it, and otherwise you'll just find out in court, I guess. That's a joke. Um, Camelin Morrison says, this is a really good question. Do you ever speak to the changing music business and how to be more creative on sustaining your career around the vampire streaming empire? Um, well, first of all, I think the way we make money now is through gigs and through merchandise, certainly, much more than through streaming. But there is certainly money in streaming as well, but it's just pretty astronomical numbers. So if you get like 15 million streams, then that translates to a okay income. You know, that's something that you can actually live off of, maybe. Um, Not quite there, but if you combine it with all the other stuff that you're doing, it's definitely a nice little bonus. I think it's important to realize that this part of um, this part of the music industry is kind of over. You're not gonna make money from selling music to listeners. You're making money by selling music to companies to use them in commercials or in movies, or you're gonna make money by selling merchandise that's based off of your music, or you're selling related products. Maybe like perfume is a good example from the pop world, where you're selling a perfume from an artist and people love the artist so much that it doesn't even matter if they do I know whether Beyonce is actually good at making perfumes? I know she's a really great singer, but does that make her a good perfume maker? Certainly not. But I love the character so much that me, 14-year-old girl, am going to buy the perfume as well. So, yeah, but I've been recently talking to this really famous German producer, and he said something that really struck me as interesting. And he said, back in the 60s or so, music was really all about being creative, and that was the only way you could get into the limelight is to really be creative with your music. You really had to stand out back then because there was so little ways of getting popular, and there's, the distribution wasn't there at all compared to today. So you had to be really creative. You really had to be unique and special. And then with digitalization of everything, and with the big companies taking over, it turned into something much different, where it was much more about like the more money you can put into your project, the more likely you are going to be succeeding. And it's really has changed again. Like we're seeing this socialization of everything, with the internet making it possible to upload your song and having a hit on your hands. So right now, again, the whole paradigm has shifted again to where it's all about being creative again. If you can make something that people just share like crazy, then you might have a hit on your hands, And I'm just thinking of this artist called Lil Dicky, who had a song called Pillow Talk, which was my latest one of those moments where I watched it and it was like, what the hell is this? And after like a couple of minutes, I was like, this is pure genius. Like, I've never seen anything like that. That guy is just doing something I've never seen before. And I've shown it to a bunch of people, and everyone just really went crazy for it. And that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is someone who makes music that really stands out about the rest. He does something that's completely new and different. And again, that song is called Pillow Talk by Lil Dicky. And give it a couple of seconds to get into it. But it's weird, but it's super, super fascinating what he's doing there. And so that's, I think, is a really good hallmark of an example for that kind of thing. Don't love his other songs that much, but this one I find really, really fascinating. Okay. I'll answer 2 more questions. Okay. Anna Sale says, question, when you have a lot of ideas in verses, sentences, and pieces of lyrics and melodies, how to structure / organize them, or how to put them together in one song / in songs? Thank you. I find that is much easier to do with lyrics, where you have, like, I always keep like a file on my phone where I just put in all the ideas of lyrics that I get. And I just recently watched an interview with Taylor Swift where she says she does much the same. Like, she just collects cool lines all day. Even like that's her pre-production phase, right? Like, before she starts actually writing, she's just always still collecting those lines. And then when the songwriting part comes, you just like, oh, I have an idea for a song. I want it to be about this. And then you just go through your file and you just look, okay, this might work. And then just kind of piece it together from what you have and add some new lines as well, obviously. And musically, personally, I've almost never combined 2 musical files that I had on my cell phone that I had recorded for myself as a demo into a piece. Usually for me, it was I take that idea, that demo, and turn that into a song. If that is a really inspiring piece of music that I just recorded, like singing under the shower, not under the shower, because you don't take your cell phone under the shower unless you have a new iPhone. But I usually, if it's inspiring, if it's good, which probably makes me want to produce it, then I can turn that little tidbit of music into something bigger, into an entire song. Because the way I work is I just recycle material as much as I can, and I'll just alter that first material that I recorded that I find really inspiring so much that you can't really tell it's the same thing, but it just gives me a lot of cohesion. And so I don't really run into that problem of having to combine 2 different things. And sometimes that will happen, that I have 2 files on my phone where I'm like, oh, you know what? These 2 might actually really go together well, but it's rarely happening for me, at the moment at least. Thank you for your answer. I will start the cold showers. Cool, man. Also, if you're interested, you should definitely check out the Iceman documentary. It's really fascinating. Iceman, Iceman. Like this Dutch guy who swims in, I don't know, like in the coldest water on Earth, so cold that his irises freeze shut and stuff like that. It's insane. It's really fascinating. All right. Let's do one more question. I actually didn't want to do another question because I'm already over time, but let's do one more question. Let's see if I have one that I could answer right quick. Would you do a video on Eminem? I think so. I'm a big fan, so I might. If you made one on M, it would get it would get 1 billion views, homie. All right, I'll take your word for it. Pounds because we're in the UK. Oh, that's interesting. Cool. Well, thanks again to HK and SuperRan13. It's super nice of you. Really, I really appreciate it. All right. Let's see. I can't find any questions that I could be answering right quick. So, is GarageBand a good songwriting software? For a beginner, it is, and it's great because you can easily upgrade to Logic Pro X, and it looks similar and it feels kind of similar. Oh man. All right. What do you like more? Okay, this is going to be the last question for today. D. Brew says, "What do you like more? A small set of instruments, or a big production?" Now, I've written both, and I started out writing like the really big production kind of stuff because that's how most songwriters start, I feel. And it's the easier way. People think it's like that's the easy one to get into. And it's easier to write like that. If you have a lot of stuff to write for, it's easier because if one instrument doesn't do something really, really good, you don't really notice it because it's just one of 100 instruments. And so you don't have to be a genius composer to write for an orchestra, for example. If you just want it to sound cool. Like if you wanted to work for an actual orchestra, that's a kind of different story. But if you just want it to sound good, like if Violin 2 plays something that's kind of off, no one's really going to notice. Over my career, though, I've slowly transitioned away from that, doing those really big productions that are kind of rare in pop music as well, unless you're Justin Timberlake, maybe. And I'm really slowly moving towards, and I have moved there, I think. I'm really moving towards simplicity. And I keep saying that line, but everyone always complains that pop music is too simple, but no one ever complains about the Apple logo. And that's how I see songwriting, how I see pop songwriting as well. I think pop songwriting has so much in common with design. And I think we can learn so much from designers and visual designers, first of all, because it's something tangible, it's something that we can look at. And secondly, because they really are so close, you know. Design is all about taking stuff away until it's perfect. And in pop songwriting, I think it's much the same thing. Much the same thing is true. We kind of want just the bare essentials to make that thing work. And then when you do that, though, then you really have to take care of all your different parts, and every single part has to be perfect. And that's where things get tricky. And that's why we have so much repetition in pop music as well, I think, is when we write something that's truly amazing, you can hear that for 3.5, 5.5 minutes on a loop. If it's really that good, you can hear that. If you write something that's not so good, and that's what a lot of amateur songwriters do, is they write something that's not really that great, but they know from pop music that they're supposed to repeat a lot. And I just get bored with it after 10, 15 seconds because I feel like I've just explored all the emotions there were to explore in that little loop. So that's what I think is so difficult about really proper hit pop songwriting, is to figure out a really good part that really does work over the period of 3.5 minutes. So, and that's the big difference between writing for big arrangements, for big sets of like instruments, or like for just a few instruments. And personally, I prefer writing for very few instruments and rather making those few instruments perfect than writing for like a big ensemble. So that would be my answer to that. Someone just asked, do you have a website? I do. It's holistic-songwriting.com or just holisticsongwriting.com, whichever one you prefer. And yeah, it has a bunch of stuff on it, including blogs. You can sign up to my newsletter there and download a bunch of free stuff and check out my courses there. And that's pretty much it. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to do the thing again where I go like this. Hold on. There we go. And again, if you want, if you like this little thing that I'm doing here, then you can download my free songwriting tools over there by just going on my website, holisticsongwriting.com, and going on the products page of that website. And there you can find some free stuff to download. It's fun, and it's, for example, like the lyric canvas, which is one of my most popular products, which I still use with every single writing session that I'm doing, so lyric writing session. I find it's hugely practical. You can also find it here on this YouTube channel by typing in "writing better lyrics with the lyric canvas." That's the name of the video. So check that out. It's I think a fun video. I spent a lot of time on it, and the lyric canvas is super useful, so check that out. Also, if you're interested, I have a couple of pro video courses, and I'm gonna, look down here to make you look that same direction. Again, on the products page. Also, subscribe and follow to the Facebook and Twitter page, and there's also a hand here pointing to what will be the subscribe button to this very YouTube channel. Hopefully you enjoyed this session. I certainly did, and I shall see you again soon. Goodbye.